voice. And I'd like to acknowledge, first of all, your commitment to yourself to turn up tonight, and also your commitment to me to tune in to what I've got to share. And the reason it's pretty special to me is, I guess, I have been following a chap online for some time, and recently he was talking about the idea of the rolling start into the new year. And he used the analogy of the car. He used to race cars. And as many of you will know, anything to do with cars is going to get my attention. And he was talking about, when you come up to traffic lights, if you time it right and you've got an empty lane ahead of you, as the light turns green, you're already underway and you're off. Not that he was supporting racing people off at traffic lights, but I thought it was really interesting, that idea of the rolling start. And the other reason that it got my attention was he raised that word momentum. Now, momentum is a huge part of what I do as a behavior analyst, because what we're looking for is, when we're trying to get behavior change, we want people to be building on small, just get people started in the process, feeling successful. You're more likely to get the outcome that you're looking for. So 7 tips to gaining momentum. How are we going to launch into 2023? And this session is important for a number of reasons, because it's about you guys, and I'm including myself in there. How are we going to show up in 2023? Good old New Year's, eh? Why do we struggle with New Year's resolutions? One thing that is often behind the struggle is making arbitrary goals that we are not emotionally connected to. And I was thinking about, most New Year's resolutions are made when we're in a heightened state, we're having a great time, we're in party mode. And unless we can stay in that zone, chances are we're going to make these random, far-reaching goals and we're not going to stick to them. And we've either experienced being that person, or we've seen somebody else suffering the disappointment of a failed New Year's resolution. In fact, doesn't gym membership go through the roof in the first few weeks of the new year? And then people drop off and they experience the pain of having spent a lot of money and time on something that they haven't followed through with. And this then becomes that sort of cycle of, I can't do this, I'm no good, and we give up. So being aware that arbitrary goals are often behind the reason why we don't stick to New Year's resolutions. So, the reality of these resolutions, what can we learn and what can we take from failures and from successes? Now, good old Tony Robbins says that, a failure isn't a single event. And we all know that success is much the same as well. It's rarely a one-off event. It's a cumulative process. We build on stuff. And in terms of failure, we're often looking at, it's the failure to call someone. It's the failure to take a small action. It's the failure to follow through. And I've often linked it also, it's the failure to get inspired by what you want to do. And the reality is, for many of us, it's the failure just to show up for us. So, what are we going to do that's different? What's going to impact us and make next year different from other years? We can build on our successes, and tonight is about looking at some tips that can enable you to get some momentum towards next year, and some ideas about how you can keep that momentum going through ongoing coaching that will keep you building on successes that you make. So what's the answer to the New Year's resolution? What are we going to do about that? And I think now more than ever, we are seeing a growing dissatisfaction. People are increasingly dissatisfied with their lives. They're questioning things. We're starting to question what people have taken for granted for a long time. We've seen a huge shift in the last 2 years in working arrangements. Suddenly the 9 to 5 is being challenged, and I'm a byproduct of that challenge. I'm now working from home. So what is the answer? How do we make meaningful New Year's resolutions? So I'm just going to tell you a story before I launch into the 7 tips, because I want to share with you an experience that I had in about 2014, I think it was. I was experiencing a new year that I didn't want. Nothing about it was new. Nothing about it was exciting. Nothing about it was firing me up. In fact, I was experiencing probably the new year from hell. My marriage was falling apart. I was in a really, really bad state. I had no idea how I was going to sort my life out. I had animals, I had a house, I had a living arrangement that couldn't go on, and I was really at my wit's end. I had tried some online coaching with a relationship coach, and it was not a good experience. And it became for me a sort of idea, or gave me ideas about how not to coach people. And I realized something during that process, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I ran away. I went away for an escape to try and clear my head. I was supposed to be starting my master's that year as well, which is, supposed to be an incredible experience. And I was just thinking, how am I going to do this? This is the end for me. And I went to my favorite place, which is Omapuri up north. And there's this amazing trail through some sort of, park. And you go up the hill and you're on the cliff top and you're looking out over the ocean, and you're looking down on the resort at Omapuri. And I was watching the sunset. I had tears pouring down my face, and I just thought, I need to do something different. I need to show up for me. I need to stop looking for other people to rescue me. I need to stop relying on people to have the answers for me. And I needed to realize that it was all down to what I was going to do. And I had to turn inwards and rely on myself. And I guess that process led me ultimately to where I am today. And the coaching experience that I had then made me realize that a coach's role is not to give answers, is not to give people false hope, which is kind of what I felt I was getting. The coaching process needs to be collaborative. And when we come to the idea of momentum and what we're going to do in order to find a better way to make New Year's resolutions, what is the word momentum? What does it mean in terms of behavior? And I just randomly Googled the meaning, and I thought it's quite interesting that those two words are very what is it? Yes, strong, strength and force, implying a certain amount of aggression in a way, but it's gained by motion or a series of events. So the series of events is obviously where we're putting our focus. We're not in a car, we're not in a vehicle, but the strength from a series of events is what is going to give us the momentum towards achieving our goals. And it's important to us because we need to remind ourselves these events, can be really small, and you get that cumulative effect that people often miss in any experience that they're having. So, tip number 1. Who was I in 2022? And the tip here is to go through your phone and find some photos from 2022 that remind you of the best bits, who you love, the joy that you had, the achievements, just the fun. It could be as simple as, I remember my mum used to just love photographing her garden through the year, and looking back through some of her photo albums, they're full of flowers and the various stages of the garden, either heading into summer or heading into winter. So find photos that connect you with the good aspects of 2022. I've recently had an experience of doing just that, looking back through my phone before I'd actually looked at these tips in detail. And something that really struck me was, some of you will know that my mum's been having a bit of a rough time, and my brother is now living in the UK. So when I go and see mum, we have a bit of a laugh, and we make a video and send it to my brother, and he'll do a video and send it so I can play it to mum. And I've been looking at these videos, and I'm really bossy. My mum's got increasing dementia, so she'll sort of be a little bit vague, and there's me going, say hi, mum, say this, do this. And on more than one occasion, I've just sort of cracked up watching these videos playing back of me sort of bossing my mum around and telling her what to do. But the videos and the photos associated with those visits have really reminded me of just how important my family is to me. And, the best bits of 2022 for me will definitely contain some of those funny photos of me bossing my mum around. So yeah, challenge yourself, go through your phone and see what you can find. And tip number 2, what didn't work in 2022? Now, this kind of seems a bit not very positive, but surprisingly, it's the slide that we're all going to feel super confident that we can come up with a list as long as our arm about what didn't work in 2022. We seem to be hardwired to look for the stuff that doesn't work. And when I put this one together, I was thinking it's kind of counterintuitive to, an inspirational presentation on getting momentum for 2023. But we need to notice what's not working. So it's not about dwelling on the tragedies or the things that didn't go our way. It's about looking for what we did, taking something from that and noticing patterns or collecting information about what we did that perhaps we can do differently. And again, this is all behavioral science at play here. The quicker we notice a pattern, the quicker we interrupt something, the less ingrained it becomes. And we all know about not so good habits becoming ingrained over time. And reframing failures as learning experiences sounds really corny, but it gives us information. We come away better informed. I've had a few people sort of say to me that, nothing's worked out for them. They just feel things are getting worse and worse. And often I'm reminding them that they're not the same person, even though they didn't succeed necessarily in the way that they want to. They've now got more information. They know what doesn't work. And I think it was it some famous inventor? How many times did he work at something? Thomas Edison, the light bulb. And I think he said one of his quotes was something along the lines, well, I've got, 1,000 ways that don't work. So it's all in the reframing, but it's all in how you use that information. And noticing patterns is really important. Patterns in our choices, patterns in our decision making, and can we do something different? And remembering that a lot of this stems from, basic survival. The quicker we pick up on stuff, the more effective and the more likely we are to be able to keep going. If we don't notice dangers, if we don't notice things aren't working, it's not good for us. And this is why we often see, I've seen similarities when we look at animals and how quickly they learn versus how quickly or how slowly we learn. They are very much more in tune with their environment and noticing things and picking up on it quicker because it's linked to their survival. So ponder what didn't work and see if you can notice patterns or see if you can take something from those experiences. Tip number 3, what worked? What went well? And this is the biggie in terms of focusing in, drilling down and saying, what did I do? What can I repeat? What can I take forward into 2023? What was my successes? What are my successes that I can build on and take with me? And I've added this slide in with the magnifying glass because we are notoriously not very good at blowing our own trumpets and saying we've done well, we've been successful, or it has to be a monumental success, an over-the-top success for us to go, yeah, okay, I did reasonably well. The more you can notice small successes, the more likely you are to shift your perspective and notice things that are going well. And again, that's another cumulative effect. Highlighting, focusing, drawing your attention to what's working, building on that. And this is something that, some of you will know I'm a teacher from way back. This is probably one of my biggest criticisms of our education system is we hone in, we drill down on what people are not good at and what's going wrong. And yet we know from an evidence-based point of view that if you focus on someone's strengths, if you focus on their successes, that is how you build confidence. That is how you build, self-esteem, whatever that may look like. people feeling successful. And an interesting byproduct of that is often other stuff gets better without you working on it. So, the successful child who feels good at something, areas of weakness will often improve simply because they feel good and they tackle it in a different way. Whereas if all day they're hearing that they can't read and they can't do this, we start to give up, we start to lose interest, we start to feel disillusioned, disappointed. And it's much the same as when I started talking about, New Year's resolutions. You just give up. What's the point? So really drill down and magnify your successes from 2022 and what can you take with you? What worked? What strategies? And here's a challenging one. Who am I not going to be? I definitely made a decision in 2014 as I felt my life was imploding, that I was not going to be a victim, that I was not going to be somebody who was bitter and twisted, hurt, and cutting up their partner's materials, setting fire to them, throwing them out the window, whatever. I thought, no, that's not who I am. I may feel like that in the moment. I may get some short-term satisfaction from doing something really radical, but that was not who I wanted to be. And making a conscious decision to decide who you're not going to be is actually, again, a sort of another counterintuitive way of being proactive towards who are you going to be. We are challenged daily with this one. Who am I not going to be? We're challenged daily with it. We've all been in situations where someone pushes our buttons, an experience challenges us, we have a knee-jerk reaction. And making that conscious decision about what you're leaving behind in 2022 is quite a powerful way of thinking, well, who am I going to be? Who do I really want to be? And being conscious of that. And I guess, when you're deciding who you want to be, it's not so much about, changing yourself. I think a lot of behavior change talks or, is finding yourself and, how are you going to be better next year? I don't buy into a lot of that because we are who we are. It's just deciding to highlight certain aspects of who we are. We don't have to take the stuff that we've been with us. We can leave it behind. It's highlighting who we really want to be. And interestingly enough, when I've asked people about their strengths or what they think they are in terms of, who they really want to be, it's quite challenging. People don't have a list ready. And while we are only too quick to be able to say what our faults are, we often struggle with our strengths and our successes or the things that we are appreciated for, that other people see in us. And getting to grips with who you want to be, again, doesn't have to be, I'm going to undergo a personality change. It's picking aspects of you that you're going to highlight, things that are going to be, things that are going to serve you in 2023. And I was reminded myself, again, another example of facing who was I going to be in the face of a challenge was I received some pretty harsh criticism via a Facebook comment. And the person didn't mention my name, but they gave some very obvious clues as to who they were talking about. And I was really hurt. I desperately wanted to justify. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to explain. And that was a real decision for me to consciously say, no, that's that person's opinion of what she saw of me. And I do not need to defend myself. I do not need to speak out. I do not need to leave a comment. I do not need to block her. And it was a really powerful experience for me, because I had to work pretty hard at it, and deciding who I wanted to be in the face of that challenge was really important for me to say, no, I'm not going to be like every other person on Facebook and come back strong as. And something worth noting for future reference is actually no comment is still a comment. So tip number 6, get goal focused. I feel I kind of have to qualify this, because goals are important. We need some clarity, we need some direction. Otherwise, every road is possible. And at the back of my mind, I was thinking, goals give us some guidance about where we're heading. They're not the be all and end all. Some of you may have heard me. Well, actually, I don't know if there are any people on here from Joe's group, but I speak sometimes to Johanna Mountford's Team JM group of women athletes. And we talk about the fact that your goal could be a competition. That's where you're heading, but it's not the be all and end all, because if you don't achieve the result that you want, or as we found during the last 2 years, the events get cancelled or postponed or whatever, people's lives often fall apart. But the goal does give us some direction and does give us a way of planning around it. But be careful that it doesn't become the be all and end all. It's the corny expression that the journey is important as well. So getting clear on your goals or outcomes, that's another way that might be, you might term it, is you want to know where you're going. You want to know what is the end result that you're pitching for. And alongside that, I would say, focus on how you want to feel. Have a sense of what are you going to feel like when you've achieved that goal, or when you've started that journey towards that goal. Focus on your feelings, because the feelings are going to be used in other areas, and the feelings are going to push you through. The emotions that you've connected to those goals are going to push you through when things get really tough. You'll hear people say, you know, if you say, oh, what's your goal for next year? And people say, oh, make more money. And then I heard somebody say the other day, the joke is, well, here's $1. That's more money for you. Is that your goal? So have some sort of goal that is quantifiable, that is clearly defined, so that you know when you've reached it. Which leads nicely on to my next slide, which is about measurement. Now, behavior analysts, we measure everything. We love data. We want to know if something's working or not. And this goes back to what I was saying about patterns. Is something working? If not, quickly change it, because we don't want to practice something that's not working. So measuring your outcomes, noticing, are you getting the results you want? Notice what isn't working so that you can make adjustments. And there's some great stories about, really practical examples of, I think, 70% or 80% of the time a plane is off course and they're just making minute adjustments all the time. There's a great example of make those adjustments, but you are going to be shifting around. Things are going to happen. Keep on track, measure what's working, but also notice what isn't working. And this can be as simple as, just keeping a journal. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to turn into, you're a data freak. Just jotting things down, trying things out is another really good way. Just saying, well, I'm going to try this for a week. I'm just going to notice the difference after a week of going to bed at 10 o'clock instead of 12:30 or whatever. Try things out, but measure it, notice the difference. And to be honest, I'm not very good at using my iPhone at all, but smartphones now with all the apps, there's so much available that we can track and use that data, use that information. And then tip number 7, get emotional about it. Connect emotions to your goals, to your outcomes. And this is another one that has got like a flip side to it, because the emotions that you connect with your goal, need to be euphoric ones, positive ones that make you feel good. So I encourage people to get emotional about successes and be as objective as they can about their failures. Try to remove emotion from things that aren't working and add emotion into things that are working. I've had some mind-blowing experiences as both a teacher and as a psychologist, going into a classroom and working with teachers and talking to them about the feedback they give to children, especially children when, by the time I'm called in, there was trouble brewing. And I often used to say to teachers, just to gauge where they were at with how they were emotionally connected to those children, was, what happens when he does the right thing? And the teachers would often look really blankly at you because their focus was so much on what he was doing that was wrong. That was where all the emotion was piled onto. And we'll often find that, and we've all been in argumentative situations where the emotions become heightened, all the energy, all the pain comes out in defending ourselves or standing up for ourselves or getting our point across. But when things go well, we're like, oh yeah, cheers, honey, thank you. And that's where the emotion needs to be. So we need to be as objective as we can about things that aren't working and pile on the emotion, get emotionally connected to things that we want to happen. Now, the emotional connection to outcomes is huge, because going back to the money situation, I want to make $1 million. Why? Well, I just want more money. I want to be able to buy things I like. You need to get emotionally connected. Most of us have got the capacity to make more money to some degree. The reason we're not where we want to be half the time is because we're not emotionally invested in making that happen. And that is probably the biggest single barrier to people actually being successful in so many areas. They're not emotionally invested in making that change. So the more you can get passionate about something, the more you can feel how you're going to feel when you get there, the more likely you are to follow through, and stick to things through the really tough times. Because let's face it, things get tough. And in my role at the moment, working with clients online, often people are coming to you when they're at their worst, when they're feeling really low, when things are not going their way. And to get that shift from that position to feeling good about yourself is a huge jump. And it's not going to happen overnight. And it's not going to happen in one session. So trying to get them connected emotionally to something successful or something they want to achieve is really the first step to bringing about change. So as a tip, it's the positive emotions that we want to be thinking about, getting emotional. So just be clear about that. So yeah, it's all quite simple really, isn't it? Just follow those 7 tips and we'll be sailing into 2023 feeling wonderful. But it's not easy. It's not easy. It's so simple. It's not easy. Feeling the emotions, live the dream, just get stuck in, off you go. So, where do we start and what do we do to build on the momentum of those tips to keep us going into 2023? And as good old Tony Robbins would say, we make a decision, we decide. We commit, we invest in ourselves, we think about what we've done in the past, what can we do differently to get a different outcome, and how important is it to us to get that different outcome. Draw on those emotions, get emotionally connected, leverage off it. That's another term that I've used quite a lot with people about leverage off what works for you.